Welcome to Human Marketing, a weekly podcast for B2B marketers, unpacking how brands can stay authentic, demonstrate authority, and build trust as AI floods our feeds with content. I'm Chris Nelson, founder of Human Video. We remotely produce podcasts and other video content with real humans and just the right amount of soul. Patrick, welcome to the Human Marketing podcast.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Patrick, tell me, just I guess to get started, just a little bit about who you are, who you're working for, and I guess we've just been chatting before the start about where you are and different places that you do end up working for a kind of global company. Yeah, tell me a little bit about your backstory and kind of who you are.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Patrick. I'm Director of Marketing at KlientBoost. So we are a US-based performance marketing agency, and I've been there for close to 2 years now. So I think it'll be 2 years, like September, October time. And I actually started out there in a kind of hybrid role. So I was fielding sales calls and also managing accounts for the UK and European clients. So I think this is where I get a lot of confusion when I'm meeting people because they see that I'm based in Edinburgh, but I work for this very, very, US-based marketing agency. So it gets a little bit confusing. But in January, I actually switched over from working on the account management side of things into actually just helping or I guess essentially we didn't have an internal marketing team at that point. So taking over the internal marketing team for actually just building the brand for KlientBoost and also for kind of helping out with generating pipeline too. So yeah, it's been a very interesting journey. And I think, as you mentioned, I tend to find myself, in this fortunate position in the remote working first world where I'm, bouncing around the globe all the time. So yeah, I was in New York last week, but I'm currently, spending the summer working out of Toronto because that's where my partner's, from originally, but spend most of my time in Edinburgh. That's, I guess I would call my home base.
Fab. I love all of those places. I have loads of affinity with Scotland, but also New York loads of times, and really love all things Canada, and ice hockey is a big thing in my world as well. But we'll talk about that afterwards. I'm intrigued. What I guess first question kind of comes out of that is what's it like marketing a marketing company?
Honestly, I feel like the most privileged marketer on the planet because I was talking about this to Patrick Shaw actually recently. So he invited me onto one of he's actually moved on to another company now, but when he was at Dealfront, he invited me onto a new podcast they have called Marketing for Marketers. And I basically said to him, like, I kind of am my own target audience, right? So all the problems I experience every single day are the exact same problems that my market experiences. And I don't use that as an excuse to not do actual, target audience research. But that it helps a lot because it's very, very easy for me to kind of like empathize with what they're going through. Very, very easy to create relevant content. And also I would say, I don't want to say very, very easy, especially the way the algorithms are at the moment. But I feel like I have a good idea of what's going to work and what's going to land before I post it, just because I kind of know what marketers are going through. But I'd say the other benefit of being a marketer that's marketing to marketers is like I'm obsessed with marketing. Like I love marketing, and so the fact that I get to talk about the thing that I am obsessed with and I'm passionate about in the actual marketing that I create is like it's a double whammy. So yeah, I guess that's what it's like. It makes life easier and it's also a lot of fun.
I love that. Yeah, that's great. So I know Patrick. We were on a cohort together on the B2B incubator with George Cunaharis. All things demand gen, which is it was only a couple of months ago. Which is kind of I suspect that's I guess how you maybe came onto my radar through him commenting on something or sharing something is quite possible. It's just the way that corner of, I guess, LinkedIn marketers seems to work, is great. and I actually saw that episode. It was really, really fantastic as well. Um,
Thank you.
so one, I mean, looking at I guess some of the things I've seen you kind of particularly talk about in the past that was drew me to inviting you onto the show was particularly you have a recent addition to your kind of content is the KlientBoost Kitchen, which is
Yes.
it's been really great. I love the whole concept. The it's kind of marketing recipes, I guess. It seemed main output. I'm right in saying kind of through YouTube, but also as a podcast as well. Is that right?
Yeah, honestly, this is kind of an interesting topic to touch on. So, KlientBoost Kitchen is it's weird. I was actually looking back through some old notebooks recently, and I wrote down this kind of like kitchen concept, like in 2019 or something originally, and the idea of like having recipe cards for Playbooks. And so the idea was I kind of realized there were so many people in the space that were doing it labs. So there was hockey stack labs. Then there's agencies that have literally named themselves after labs like Refine Labs, Omni Lab, and I know other companies have done a lab, and I think it makes a lot of sense as a concept, and especially for agencies to have a kind of innovation engine, because I think when people come to agencies, they're not just looking for cookie cutter, playbooks. They're really looking for somebody that's going to push the envelope and help them be one step ahead of competitors, right? And so I really felt, and this was not something I really researched. I would say this is one of the most, I'm quite a data-driven marketer, but this is one of the most vibey decisions I made. I really felt like we needed to have some similar engine to do that, but I wanted to position it differently. And so that was the idea behind the KlientBoost Kitchen, is that kind of becomes the innovation engine, but with a unique spin on it. So it's a little bit more memorable, and it doesn't look like we're just trying to copy what everybody else is doing through that kind of labs concept. And so that's where that came from. But what we're trying to do with the KlientBoost Kitchen, and this is kind of our approach to, I guess, a few of the different business service areas that we have, is moving into what we call like a media network approach to content marketing. And so KlientBoost Kitchen is less one thing that sits on one channel, but it's more like its own, it's almost like its own TV program or its own brand. And then we have our own, like KlientBoost Kitchen has its own YouTube channel, for example. It has its own separate newsletter. It has its own separate brand that we've created. And that also then feeds into some of the LinkedIn content that we do. So we have a lot of like the carousels, the PDF carousels perform really well right now, which is just kind of step-by-step guides of different recipes that we've tested out with clients, which is really cool. And then we also do have a podcast. So the podcast goes out to, I think, Spotify and Apple at the moment. And then the YouTube videos are just a little bit different because they're more optimized for kind of video consumption.
Fab. No, I love all of that, and I'm really keen to that you kind of told me about all that, because I mean it's a lot of what we do obviously is entirely kind of video content, remotely produced video content, and we're always really interested in the distribution of that, like what's working, particularly how that I'm really interested in that. Like I guess creating a specific channel or brand for distribution of something alongside, like actually like the B2B playbook with George that I just mentioned, like it's probably a good example of that, where the playbook is the podcast and particularly the YouTube channel, but then there are other kind of products. Their cohort, the B2B incubator is kind of the main product, I guess, out of that. So it's a really great way to go about those things, and I love the whole concept. You've oh my God, I can't even imagine the work that's going into like the graphics that you're doing, and you're supporting it. The YouTube pieces, like there's a lot going on there in terms of overlaying things, and really I can see how you're communicating everything really well through additional graphics. Like it's all supporting what you're saying. But yeah, like good luck keeping up with all that, and but it's really effective. I've really enjoyed both of them. Thinking about I guess piggybacking on the content of those, um, the first one was all about thought leadership, and that's something that we really into. One thing we help our customers with is particularly just to capture, like, so kind of video first approach to thought leadership that then obviously can be repurposed in lots of different ways. But you had like so much, the whole a whole episode of wonderful stuff about thought leadership. I don't want to kind of dive too much into like everything, but to be specific, like thinking of our world of video, like can you tell me a little bit about what you're seeing? Like I'm always really interested in the actual creative, I guess, like in terms of especially thinking of ads, and in thought leadership world, we're thinking about thought leader ads on LinkedIn, which are kind of all the rage, and there's a whole story there, which is been really wonderful. I see a lot of people talking about how well those are working for them, but thinking just about I guess the creative or the actual content that's being created. Um, have you Can you kind of speak to what you see, working really well? What particular subjects, maybe specifically for thought leader ads, I could think of, and often it is like organic doing well that then becomes an ad. Just that slightly wide question of like what you see working well, what you recommend people, particularly in the B2B world, maybe trying to use thought leadership for.
Yeah, I think that's a great question because I see so many people from having worked with, uh, for me, coming from like 5 years of working, well, I mean, I've always been agency side, but 5 years of stepping into this head of marketing role, I was really working with clients day to day. And so from the thought leader perspective, I think where most companies would go wrong is I think everybody's been missold top of funnel. And so what I mean by that is that they think top of funnel means just like generic content that appeals to broad audiences. And that's failed for most businesses. So they run it, it doesn't work, and then they say, tried that, didn't work. That's a common thing that we laugh about in the agency world. You pitch something to a client and they say, tried that, didn't work. And we're like, well, how did you try it? Because that's really important. Um, and so in terms of what works, the first thing to get right is really just to actually understand the audience. And that sounds really boring. It sounds really cliche, but it needs to be repeated because most companies really don't put enough time into doing that. And so for me, for the first like 30 days of being in this role, I spent a lot of time just like going through gong recordings, going through CRMs. I also spend a ton of time in communities like Exit 5, where my target audience hangs out. I also just DM heads of marketing and marketing directors and CMOs all the time on LinkedIn. Just honestly, like really just, just DMs that are like, hey, like, how's this quarter going for you? Like, what's on your mind? What are you struggling with? To try and just understand where they're at. And so when you have that understanding of the problems the audience has, then you can start thinking about how can you tackle those subjects, but in a way that you're able to kind of link back to your product. And I think that's where, when I say that people have been missold top of funnel, I think that's where people go wrong. They rarely link back to their product. And so it doesn't create the mental associations to have this actually work for them. Do you know what I mean? So people, it might get, they might create posts that get a lot of engagement or get a lot of reach. But if people don't remember like who you are or how you can help them, it's never going to generate any business for you. So that I think that's the first piece of the puzzle in terms of what's working. I come on these podcasts sometimes and I feel really, really boring, but honestly, a lot of the boring stuff works. So I would say our most successful thought leader ads fall into two categories. It's either a really strong polarizing POV that, again, we're just making sure that we tie back to what we do, or it's going to be just pain point agitation, and that's based on both of these are really based on the kind of deep audience research that we've done initially to figure out, what is the audience contending with right now. But I would honestly say from a thought leader perspective, those two post formats just consistently perform the best. And you can tackle them in multiple different ways. Text-based posts work really well. Honestly, we've struggled to make. It's interesting. Video works really well for us on CTV and obviously on YouTube. We've struggled to make it work as much on LinkedIn because it's kind of like shifted the algorithm. I mean, organically, it works very well
Uh,
on
don't even
CTV.
start me on the video algorithm. Like it's
Yeah, it's very frustrating because like 12 months ago, I would just like load up my screen, like hit Loom, hit record, and just film myself, talking through a specific problem, post it, and get like 10,000 impressions. I do the same thing now and get like 500. So I think the video stuff works really, really well for CTV, that's like non-skippable in-stream videos. So I think that's why I think it works so well. But honestly, the post format doesn't matter as much as the content. I think people should spend less time worried about post formats and more on the content because video will blow up. Like, I think we just haven't cracked the video formula for LinkedIn yet. But the topic tends to be most important. It's probably worth trying, like cheat sheets and carousels work really well for us. But again, it's all based on that deep ICP research. And it's really based on like solving problems or strong POVs that tie back to the product.
amazing. Oh, so much there, Patrick. Thank you. A fellow Exit 5 member here as well. Like, it's awesome, isn't it? Like, it's so good. You can get lost in it completely. Like, there's so much going on, and quite a big community. Is over. I don't know. Last time I looked, there was over 5,000 people in it. Like, it's great. And yes, like absolutely, we say like video first kind of thought leadership content, but everything we do is advising clients to repurpose that in lots of different ways, including carousels. Like we've particularly had success with that ourselves, and lots of different ways. Like my take on the algorithm thing is just is wild, and those numbers that you're saying exactly the sort of thing that we see. But I think from a paid point of view, like I always say, as a video is part of the mix, really helps with that kind of humanization thing as well. Like we hadn't met before you came on the call, and you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting an Irish voice, but like that's one of the things that when I pop up on LinkedIn doing my kind of thought leadership stuff, like that comes across, and people get to know who I am, how I approach things, what I sound like, and will connect that in terms of like personal branding and connecting that with what I do and how I help people, and that when I pop up in different ways, like as images or at the end of a carousel, with a call to action, still my face pops up and the brand colors and everything. That I just always think that a video element really helps with that humanization of a brand, and that could be founders, that could be technical people in an organization, it could be a CEO. It's a part of the mix, and it's not everything. It's never everything, but it's the only thing I feel that does that humanization job better than anything else. That was all amazing. I asked that question because you're saying you DM folks with that particular question. Like I DM a lot of ad agencies to say, look, everybody talks about, I guess, like their kind of strategies and the kind of technical side of it, but I see very little people talking about the kind of creative and like what works and what doesn't, and and actually you're one of the rare people that I see, like even in those breakdowns you did, you're actually talking about what elements to include in visuals and whatnot, which is really refreshing. But that's what I ask people about. I'm like, how are you kind of formatting video? How are you as images and whatnot? How is that all working? And it's really interesting because quite often they're like, yeah, we don't know, like our clients just give us stuff and we try it out and we iterate. It's super interesting to me, like how many ad agencies don't seem to have an answer to that. I don't know what's going on there. Are you horrified by that?
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I think there's I don't know. I'm not gonna like spend too much time talking shit about
No,
other ad
fair enough.
agencies.
No,
There's some
absolutely.
great ones out there,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
there's also we get so many people come to us where it's like the agency, they had no business charging money for what they were delivering.
Yeah, no,
It's
I've
like
heard that a lot. Absolutely.
wild.
Yeah, yeah, but there are 100% loads of good folks as well doing it really well.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
the the, the other kind of part of that, then your next episode was all about content marketing, and um, and like as part of what I'd love to chat a little bit about is like we're on a podcast here, like our very first approach to creating podcast is the redistribution of that. Um, Again, like trying to narrow into sort of a part of that discussion for you. Just thinking a little bit about how you look at content creation, I guess, for and sort of on the content marketing side of things, thinking about how maybe clients and other people you see doing this side of things well, using human conversations, real people, and even in 2025, sitting having a good chat about something, and repurposing that in lots of really good ways. Like, how do you see that being done well, and maybe like the flip side of that is like, what is there a bad way you've seen that done, and like just good tips, I guess, of all of that. It's a big question.
It's a big question, but it's a fun one to answer. Um, I mean, like the honest truth is, I see content marketing being done poorly more than I see it being done
Yeah,
well.
no, tell me about that. I'm really interested. Yeah,
Yeah, and so I think my POV on it is, I guess we're gonna delve into like a psychology lesson here at this
let's
point,
do it.
but I think there's a bit too much ego in bad content marketing, and what I mean by that is it's not thinking about the audience, it's thinking about the me, or it's thinking about the business, and that's not necessarily wrong. Content does need to tie back to the business, but the business doesn't need to be the focus of the content. And this is what a lot of people don't get. And so you'll see on LinkedIn, people will complain. A post will go viral and people won't understand why it went viral. They'll be like, yeah, but I created this really valuable piece of content. Why didn't this go viral when this post about how somebody lost their AirPods went viral? And I'm like, well, because the first thing content needs to do is be relatable. And so a post about losing your AirPods is something that or some equivalent feeling is something all of us can empathize with. So that content does well because like people see themselves in it, you know? And so I think that's probably the first place that businesses go wrong is they come at it just with this business first approach. They think, what do we want to talk about? What are we trying to say? And that's kind of the reverse of the approach that we do. So I'm very much a huge proponent of like you should be pulling the content ideas from the market, not trying to push them onto the market. And I think push strategies can work. It worked for Steve Jobs. It worked for Nike, but most of us aren't Nike and most of us aren't Apple. Most of us are just selling relatively boring business to business products, and people don't care for like these like grandiose statements and stuff like that. And so that'd be the first thing. I think more people just need to actually just pull content ideas from the market. I think the second problem, and then coming back to this ego thing, is that a lot of people will use content as a way to express some like unfulfilled creative need. And so you'll read hooks that are really like eloquently written, or it'll be like a really witty quip, but it's like you need like a degree in archaeology to mine the meaning from it. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, and so that I think that's also like an ego problem within content marketing sometimes is they're more focused on, oh, how can I sound like a good writer as opposed to how can I make this as clear and as obviously relevant to the audience as possible. Um, and then I think the next problem I see is that people like hyper focus on the wrong things with content. So I'll ask questions like, you know, should we use an ebook or a white paper? Should it be long form or short form? Should it be video or text only? It's like that's stuff you can think about later. But the most important thing is like, is it relevant to the audience, and can they get what they need from it? And that's also what I would say is missing from a lot of content marketing. Is there's either not really like a unified narrative that runs through it that's kind of cohesive, and people can go from one stage to the end and understand what the purpose of it was. And I find this especially with the like how-to content, is it doesn't like, you don't get to the end of it and have something practical to take away. And so a big focus for us with our content marketing is I've kind of said at the end of everything, somebody needs to get to the end of it and know exactly what the next steps are to do. Otherwise, it's not useful. And so I would say those three key things broadly are probably the biggest problems I see with content. Um, Maybe businesses, I think this is a weird thing to say in B2B, because people say that B2B marketing is boring or uncreative. I think that's probably true to some degree, but it's usually very polished. So lots of companies have the perfect brand guidelines. They have like well-designed graphics and stuff. But they'll focus on that more than they'll focus on the actual like caliber of the content. And so you could have actually pretty rough around the edges content. Like some of my best content is just a screen grab of something using a screenshot tool from an ad platform with an arrow pointing to it with like a piece of writing that tells somebody what this is telling them. And then I'll have a post that expands upon what they're seeing in the image. It's really janky. It looks rough around the edges, but then it gets like 10,000, 20,000 impressions, 100, 200 likes, because people, they can relate to it, and they get to the end of it and they know what to do next. It's like useful and it's applicable. So I would also say that's another area that businesses go wrong, is I think it's definitely better to have like a world-class caliber of content, but only if that kind of baseline level of just actual content quality is there. And I think more businesses should actually just focus on the quality of the content so that it's actionable, relatable, usable, versus trying to like get it all polished. That actually should come second once you've already figured out that first problem.
Oh, I love all of that. And yeah, and I see that everywhere, and we, like I kind of spend my days working with marketing teams. Like I end up sort of semi-embedded with them, and creating the video content side all around the world. But like what I find is we end, we end up, almost like in a battle with brand, and they, the brand teams are like, I remember very recently in a conversation about like YouTube thumbnails, and the brand team had these like extremely beautiful things. And I was like, I'm telling you now, the data's going to say that will be terrible. And I think I said the line, YouTube is where design goes to die, and I mean, it's true. Like I know I've seen all the data. It's, just everybody knows that a smiling face and the right text and the right motivation in terms of where someone's looking, even in a thumbnail, and all these little things that aren't anything to do with beautiful design actually influence how successful a piece of content can be, and in lots of ways, even in the writing example, I've been on kind of a social selling journey. I've recently, I was 15 years, I was a commercial filmmaker, traveled all around the world doing, making, just all sorts of different types of commercial film. Start of the year, started this new remote production company. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm trying to promote my own business, but so I've been, I guess, trying to learn copywriting and all, seen all the advice, and it like it is absolutely, the advice is like, here's the particular writing copy, particular type of hook. It has to have this structure. You have to separate the sentences in this way. And to me, it's just cookie cutter. It's like everything, you just look the same and sound the same as everyone else. And I've kind of shunned all of that. And I just post as I talk. I don't know if I post in a Northern Irish accent, but that is my approach. Is just like say what I'm feeling. And I think there's something in all the content we create. We're trying to create something that's maybe just like extremely authentic in the way that you were talking about there. It is it's pretty raw sometimes. I'm not really an advocate even of like taking out ums and ahs in content and things like that. I think all of those imperfections are what makes us human and within reason, you know. But and my, you know, the whole bet of the company is that as more things, especially in an AI world, like I see just this uniform nature of content create, especially images and even video, like it all feels the same. There's a real opportunity there to kind of interrupt that pattern and be the content that kind of stands out, I think, in a feed in the future, if everything continues to homogenize even further the same, you know, which I see happening, like really is, you know, stuff just looks the same and sounds the same. So there's an opportunity there, I think, and I totally get what everything you just said there is aligns completely with that. To shift gear a little bit, Patrick, is the I've heard you talking about this a bit, and it's a big thing that we end up encountering again, like particularly with podcast production. It's very much a long-term bet. It's kind of brand marketing. It's creating content for the 95% or all of that sort of thing. And quite often I'm having these, you know, I end up as the person in the discussion. Maybe it's always the CEO, you know, like the marketer tends to be on board and the CEO is like, oh, I can't measure any of this and all of that classic tale. I've heard you talk about this recently. I'd love to hear just your take again on particularly like, I know you have some thoughts on like brand measurement, I guess, and like how to solve that kind of age-old problem. Maybe it's not an age-old problem, maybe it's a very recent but real problem of I guess the attribution of all of this kind of content creation and longer term brand play, you know, which I feel very strongly, you know, the value of, but it's just, you know, it still needs to be fought for in some organizations, you know. How are you seeing that play out? How do you answer that question, I guess, and you know, in terms of particularly measurement of the success of the unmeasurable?
Yeah. I mean, so the first thing is I love my attribution tools as a digital marketer, you know, so it's always going to be hard for me to give those up because, you know, they do give some clarity as to what's working and what's not working, but they don't show you everything, right? They really only show you click-based and to some degree now impression-based channels, and only in the digital space as well. So it misses a lot of the picture, and especially with something like a podcast, which is more likely to be consumed on maybe a TV or your Alexa or your iPad or your phone, and not something that's necessarily connected to your business assets. That's harder for ad platforms to track. And so I think one of the things marketers and CEOs and marketers like, you know, I've tried to post about this and it doesn't do very well because marketers don't want to hear this, but marketers do need to do a better job of educating CEOs on how marketing works. In an ideal world, the CEO would just get it. I'm very lucky because our CEO is the CEO of a marketing agency.
Well,
So
yeah,
he, for the most
you're
part, just
cheating.
gets it.
Yeah,
That makes life, yeah, I'm cheating. It makes life a
yeah.
lot easier. But I mean, I still have to, it's not like it's still not an easy life for me. Like I still like if I want to launch a new program, I still need to go to him and say, "Hey, here's how much it's going to cost. Here's how long it's going to take to see effect. Here's what I think the return of this over X period of time is going to be." So it's not even for me that has a CEO gets it. I still have to like dot the I's and cross the T's on things, you know. And a lot of marketers avoid that, and I see this in LinkedIn where marketers will say, you know, marketers shouldn't be held accountable for revenue. And I'm like, I'm sorry, there's no version of reality where a business is going to allow you to operate with no revenue accountability. If you're not generating revenue in a period that, you know, in a period of time that makes sense for the business and, you know, pays for itself and then some, then you're probably not as effective at marketing as you think you are, right? Because that is the ultimate goal of marketing. That's a little bit harsh to say, but it's the real world, and it's not going to get any better. Like it's actually going to get harder. It feels like businesses are becoming more and more obsessed with efficiency. So that's the first thing, is like, you just need to accept that's the world you live in. But we do need to come away from being obsessed with attribution by itself as well. So just because you can't track it doesn't mean it's not working. And so there's a few different ways we can measure this. So one thing that we've done is split up demand generation metrics and brand marketing metrics. So on the brand side, we measured things like share of voice, which is, versus our competitors. How often are we being mentioned on social media, on videos, on different websites? We also look at share of search. So that's how many people are searching for our brand versus competitors. That's a pretty good signal for like market share as well. So if that's growing, um, that means that your brand is also growing. And the good thing about that is that share of search is kind of agnostic of market conditions. And so I love things that are agnostic of market conditions, because I think a lot of marketers as well forget that they are operating in dynamic markets. And so what can happen is, April was a good example, actually. So as soon as, I'm not going to get political here, but like as soon as Trump announced tariffs on countries, market fear index went through the roof. As a result, price sensitivity went through the roof. CFOs put holds on budgets because companies needed to work out their new unit economics, because obviously importing goods now, importing anything really was going to cost them more. And so what that meant is, for us, inbound dropped off a cliff. And so as a marketer, when I'm looking at, okay, we've gone January, February, March, we've had month-on-month growth each month. When we would typically see the opposite, we'd maybe see like spike in January, then a little bit of a drop off in February, then a little bit of an increase in March, then a bigger spike in April, and then a drop off in May. And so I'm like, okay, this is unusual. I don't think my marketing program just broke overnight. So I need to go and analyze, is there any kind of like market conditions that are causing this? And so something like share of search is agnostic of market conditions, because it just shows you the percentage of the current available demand that you own. So it's agnostic of like how much inbound you're getting. It's just how much of the available inbound are you getting. So I think that's a useful one. I think two really overlooked metrics as well, which is more on the ad platform side of things, is like audience penetration and frequency. So making sure that you're actually reaching, because you alluded to the kind of like 95/5 rule earlier. And so what I kind of say with brand marketing, if you want it to work and you want it to drive revenue, then the more of your total audience you can get in front of, you kind of like increase your luck surface area, I call it, of actually hitting in-market prospects. And so I think that's one useful thing to look at. We also look a lot at engagement rates on social media platforms too. I think that's a pretty strong signal. And then with that, to kind of like verify everything, we're also starting to use something that we call it the measurement Trident, which is where we use media mix modeling to kind of create hypotheses about what's working and what isn't. So what that does is that just maps out all of your marketing activity for like the last 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and looks for correlations between, spikes in marketing activity and how it influenced pipeline and revenue. And so you can use that to build out hypotheses and say, okay, it looks like if we have a 90 days sales cycle, we know that, okay, if we increased budget by, I don't know, 50K here, and then 90 days later, we also had, an increase in pipeline and an increase in revenue, and the bulk of that budget increase was on LinkedIn ads, for example, then we can have a strong hypothesis that increase in budget in LinkedIn ads means that 90 days later, we'll also get an increase in revenue and in pipeline. And so the next element of that kind of measurement Trident that we have is, then we'll kind of want to validate those attribution hypothesis by kind of like proving lift. And the way that we can do that is with geo-testing. And so what you do there is you just target one specific location or one specific audience segment. So that could be, for us, maybe we would target only like Alabama or something. And then we would do that for 30 days and see, do we have more inbound than average in that area? And then if yes, we can have a pretty high confidence that it worked. You can also do that with job titles, right? So you could say, okay, we're going to double spend only on one specific job title. So I might decide to do that for like head of growth, for example, and then say, analyze it. Did we have a spike in inquiries from just heading growths that was above like the other increases that we saw in other areas? And then we can have pretty high confidence that the brand marketing is actually working. And I would say that's probably the best way to measure it at the moment, is to use MMM and attribution to get a feel for what's working. But then you also need to just go and kind of validate it. But you also need to do it over the time frame that makes sense as well. Like a podcast, that's going to take what, like maybe 2 years to validate over. So you also need to understand the ramp times of different channels. And like the podcast might not make sense for every business, because I think what doesn't get factored into analysis is how well you're actually executing something. And so if you're one of these businesses that wants to be on every channel and you're executing 100 channels poorly, of course the performance is going to look bad because you're doing everything not as well as you could. And in that scenario, you probably actually need to cut back on some channels and just focus on doing a few channels really, really well.
Oh man, I feel like I need to take a breather. so good. It just, my head, mind blown. That's fab. I love it. Really, really cool. No, I mean, like, and so it'll be like just that whole piece is so useful. It's very useful for me to hear, really encouraging actually for me to hear, but also just really useful for the audience. Like it's a big thing that I think about a lot and have to kind of, I guess, get involved in conversations with a lot. And so it's amazing. This has been fab. I want to be really respectful of your time. So, how can people find out more about you and what KlientBoost do as well?
Yeah, good question. So the easiest place to find out about KlientBoost, just head to the website, www.clientboost.com. We're also very, very active on LinkedIn. So if you follow us on LinkedIn, we're pretty much posting updates daily at this stage. We actually recently launched a thought leader program. So like 20 people in our team are posting daily on LinkedIn. So we reshare a lot of that content on the LinkedIn channel. But yeah, best place to find me is on, same again, LinkedIn. I probably spend like way more time than I should on LinkedIn, like 2 to 3 hours a day. I post pretty much every single day. You usually see me in the comments. That's a good place to find me. But also KlientBoost Kitchen on YouTube, KlientBoost Kitchen on Spotify or Apple, whichever you prefer. And then if you head to my LinkedIn profile as well, there's a little button to sign up to the newsletter if you want to get, if you prefer to kind of read the versions, the recipes that we do in the podcast.
Fab, amazing. And I can attest to that. Like you're on the podcast because I kind of came across all your great content popping up in loads of different ways as well. The recipes are amazing. Can't wait to see what kind of comes out of that. Obviously, I'll link to all of those things in the episode. But like, this has been amazing. I really appreciate your time. Really good to properly meet you. And yeah, the next time you come on the podcast, we'll dive deep into getting your whole company involved in creating thought leadership content on LinkedIn, because that's a whole other thing. But I really appreciate your time. It's been awesome.
Yeah, same. Thank you for having me on. It was fun.